Here's a story about how a woman's worst moment turned into a miracle. But I won't spoil the ending because you have to hear it to believe it. Get ready to get emotional. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Quiet Life Stories. We post videos every single day. Hit that like button if you enjoy this story and leave a comment telling us where you're from and what time you were listening. She was humiliated on the worst blind date of her life until a little girl asked if she could be her new mommy. What happened next left the entire restaurant in tears. The bathroom mirror reflected a woman of about 30 who was trying to hide her nervousness with one more coat of lipstick. Valerie adjusted her navy blue dress for the 10th time, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "It's going to be okay. This time will be different." Her friend Lauren had insisted so much on this blind date that Valerie finally gave in. "He's perfect for you," she kept saying. Successful, charming, and looking for something serious. After 2 years of being single, focused only on her job as an elementary school teacher, maybe it was time to give love another chance. The restaurant Starlight Grill was the kind of place Valerie only knew from photos on social media. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, tables were covered in crisp white linen, and the holiday decorations looked like they came straight out of a magazine. A pianist played soft melodies while waiters moved like silent dancers between the tables. She arrived right on time as always. The host led her to a reserved table near the windows, offering a view of the city's bustling downtown, all lit up with festive lights. Golden twinkles danced on the skyscrapers, creating a magical scene that warmed her heart. Maybe this really was the special night she'd been waiting for. Justin showed up 15 minutes later, walking with the confidence of someone used to being the center of attention. Tall, with perfectly styled hair and a suit that cost more than Valerie's monthly salary. She stood up to greet him, but he barely glanced in her direction before sitting down. "So, you're the teacher?" And he said, not really asking, checking his phone while he spoke. "Lauren told me." His tone made it clear that being a teacher wasn't exactly a compliment in his book. Valerie felt a knot form in her stomach, but she tried to stay optimistic. First impressions could be deceiving. "Yes, I work with third graders. It's a job I really love." Her voice carried the genuine pride she always showed when talking about her work. Justin finally looked up from his phone, scanning her from head to toe with a look that made her feel small. "Interesting. And how much do you make?" The question hit her like a punch, direct, raw, and disrespectful. Valerie blinked a few times, trying to process if she'd heard him right. "Sorry, but the pay must be pretty modest, right?" He gave a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Lauren said you live alone in a rented apartment. I imagine it's hard to maintain a decent lifestyle." The words landed like cold stones. Valerie felt her face burn, a mix of shame and indignation rising in her throat. Around them, other couples were chatting animatedly, completely oblivious to the awkwardness she was going through. Well, it's not about the money. It's about making a difference in the kids' lives." "Oh, how romantic." Justin laughed mockingly. "But romance doesn't pay the bills, does it? Look at this place. I bet you've never been here before. This dish right here," he pointed at the menu, "costs more than you make in a day." Every word was calculated to hurt. Valerie stared at her own hands, trying to find the strength to answer, to defend herself. But that man's cruelty had left her speechless. The waiter approached to take their order. Justin didn't even wait for Valerie to choose. "For me, the grilled salmon with asparagus. And for the young lady?" He paused theatrically, looking at Valerie with contempt. "I think a simple salad is fine. Nothing too expensive." The humiliation was public. The waiter tried to hide his discomfort, but it was impossible to miss the situation. Valerie wanted to disappear. Crawl under the table, just run out of that place. "Actually," Justin continued, now speaking louder, as if he wanted others to hear, "I'm wondering if this is going to work. You seem like a person who's too simple for my lifestyle." The surrounding tables started to pay attention. Discreet whispers spread like ripples. Valerie saw a woman whisper something to her husband, who looked in her direction with pity. A couple at the table across from them stopped eating to watch the scene. "You know what?" Justin stood up abruptly. "I just remembered I have an important call to make, a work emergency." He grabbed his phone and put on a dramatic performance. "Hello, yes, I understand. It's urgent, really. Okay, I'm on my way." He hung up the phone and looked at Valerie with a fake smile. "Sorry, my dear, but I need to go. Business. You understand? Or maybe you don't, considering your situation." He threw a small bill onto the table. "This should cover your salad. See you later." Justin walked out as if nothing had happened, leaving Valerie alone at a table for two in the middle of the fanciest restaurant in the city with dozens of curious eyes glued to her. The silence that followed was deafening. Valerie felt her face burning, her hands trembling slightly. The bill on the table seemed to scream her humiliation for everyone to see. The waiter returned, clearly unsure how to act. Would the lady like to order? Valerie looked at the menu at prices that were truly beyond her budget. The salmon Justin had ordered cost more than she spent on food in a whole week. Her purse had exactly enough cash counted out for the week's transport. Her voice came out like a whisper. I need to go to the restroom first. She stood up, trying to maintain her dignity, but every eye in the restaurant seemed to follow her every step. In the bathroom mirror, she found a broken woman, mascara running and eyes red from held-back tears. How had she been so naive? How did she not realize that Justin was exactly the kind of man who judged people by how much money they had? Lauren must have known what he was like. Could it be that her own friend thought she deserved so little? When she got back to the table, determined to just order water and get out of there as fast as possible, she noticed something had changed. A little girl about 8 years old was standing right next to her chair. The girl had curly hair tied back in 2 braids decorated with red holiday bows. She was wearing a burgundy velvet dress that looked like it came straight out of a fairy tale, and she was holding a teddy bear with a gold tie. Sorry to bother you, the girl said in a sweet, polite voice, but you're sad. Valerie blinked, surprised by the little girl's directness. She glanced around quickly, looking for whoever was in charge of the child. I'm okay, thank you for asking. The girl tilted her head to the side, studying Valerie with big, expressive eyes. My name is Mia. I saw what that man did to you. Her voice carried a seriousness that was impressive for someone so young. He was really mean. The girl's simple, sincere words touched Valerie in a way she hadn't expected. After all that cruelty, finding such kindness from someone so young felt like an unexpected gift. Thank you, Mia. That's very sweet of you. The girl smiled, revealing a gap where she had lost a baby tooth. Can I sit with you for a little bit? My dad's in a meeting over at that corner table, and it's super boring. Valerie looked in the direction Mia was pointing. A man in a dark suit was talking seriously with 2 other men with papers scattered all over the table. He seemed way too focused to notice that his daughter had wandered off. Sure, you can sit. Mia hopped onto the chair across from her and set her teddy bear on the table. This is Benny. He's my best friend. She made the little bear wave at Valerie. Benny says you have a pretty smile even when you're sad. For the first time that terrible night, Valerie actually smiled. There was something magical about that little girl's innocence, a pure light that contrasted completely with the darkness Justin had brought. Benny is very wise for a teddy bear. He is. And you know what else, Mia said. She leaned in close as if she were about to share a big secret. He said you'd be a perfect mom. Mia's words hung in the air as if time had stood still. You'd be a perfect mom. Valerie felt her heart race, not sure how to respond to such an unexpected comment coming from a child. Mia, that's very kind of you, she managed to say, still processing how strange the situation was. The little girl swung her legs in the chair, settled Benny the bear in her lap, and looked right into Valerie's eyes with an intensity surprising for her age. It's not just kindness, it's the truth. I've studied this a lot. Her voice carried a seriousness that contrasted with her angelic look. You have the soft hands of someone who cares and eyes that really pay attention. And even after being treated badly by that horrible man, you weren't rude to me. Valerie blinked a few times. There was something extraordinary about this girl, a level of perception and speech that went way beyond her 8 years. You studied what exactly? Said. Mia opened a small purse hanging from the arm of the chair and pulled out a pink notebook covered in star stickers. She flipped through a few pages until she found what she was looking for. Here's my list of important qualities for a mom. She began reading with complete seriousness. First, she has to be kind to strangers. You were kind to me even though you were sad. Second, she can't yell when she's upset. You didn't even yell at that mean man. Third, she has to actually like kids, not just pretend to like them. Valerie leaned forward, fascinated by the maturity of the conversation. And how do you know I actually like kids? Because you're talking to me like I'm important, not like I'm a nuisance that has to be tolerated. Mia turned another page. Fourth quality, she has to be brave. And you are brave. What do you mean? You came alone to a fancy place like this. I heard my dad saying this restaurant is super fancy and chic. Only brave people come to places like this alone. The observation drew a melancholic smile from Valerie. If only Mia knew how insecure and out of place she felt in that environment. And there's one more quality, a very important one. Mia continued, closing her notebook and staring intently at Valerie. The person has to need a family just as much as I need a mom. The comment hit Valerie like a lightning bolt. She felt her eyes filling with tears again, but this time it wasn't from humiliation. It was something different, something deeper. Mia, you don't have a mom? The girl shook her head, not with sadness, but like someone simply stating a fact. No, it's just me and Dad, and he's wonderful, but… She paused dramatically. He works too much and doesn't know how to do pretty hairstyles with my hair. And he doesn't understand why I need 15 different stuffed animals to sleep well. Valerie laughed genuinely for the first time that night. 15 stuffed animals. Wow, yes. Each one has a specific function. Benny here is for when I'm scared. Lulu, my unicorn, is for when I want to dream about pretty things. Captain Whiskers, my stuffed cat, is for when I need protection. Mia continued listing the little animals with a comical seriousness. While listening to the detailed explanation about the hierarchy of the stuffed animals, Valerie watched the girl with growing admiration. Mia was articulate, intelligent, funny, and had a magnetic personality that made it impossible not to get attached to her. But, Mia said, suddenly interrupting her own list. I'm not looking for just any mom. It has to be the right mom. And how would you know who the right mom is? Mia smiled mysteriously and whispered as if she were sharing the biggest secret in the world. I made a very specific request to Santa Claus. I asked him to help me find the perfect mom before Christmas, and I told him to give me a clear sign when I found her. Valerie felt a shiver run down her spine. What kind of sign? That she would be in a pretty place but sad. That someone would have been mean to her but she would still be kind, and that she would need help. Mia paused dramatically, exactly like you right now. The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Valerie felt like she was experiencing something surreal, as if that conversation were part of a strange and wonderful dream at the same time. Mia, wait, there's more. The girl opened her little bag again and took out a small pink envelope. My last test. What test? Mia opened the envelope and pulled out a slightly crumpled photo. It was an old picture from back when Valerie was still in teaching college. She was surrounded by kids from a volunteer project she used to help with on weekends. Valerie's eyes went wide. Where did you get this photo? That's the best part. Mia was practically vibrating with excitement. I found this picture in a box of old stuff my dad keeps. And when I asked who you were, he got super weird about it and said it was someone very special he knew a long time ago. Valerie's heart started racing. She took the photo with trembling hands, looking at her younger self full of dreams, surrounded by smiling children. Your father… What's he like? What's his name? Daniel. Daniel Thompson. He has a construction company and does community projects. He's tall, handsome, has green eyes, and turns red when he's nervous. Mia giggled, just like right now when he looks over at our table every now and then. Valerie instinctively turned her head in the direction Mia had pointed out earlier. The man who was in the business meeting had stopped talking and was looking straight at her. Even from a distance, she could see a pair of familiar green eyes, a face that had changed over the years, but one she would never forget. Daniel Thompson, her first love. The shy boy she used to help with math in 5th grade. The teenager who gave her her first kiss behind the school library. The young man who went away to study in another city, promising to come back but was never heard from again. It's not possible, she whispered more to herself than to Mia. I knew it. Mia clapped discreetly. I knew you guys knew each other. That's why my dad got so weird when I showed him the photo, and why he always gets kind of sad when he talks about you. He talks about me sometimes. Yeah. Mostly when we're doing homework and he sees how good I am at math. He always says, you remind me of someone very special who taught me that learning can be fun. The words hit Valerie like a wave of memories. She remembered helping Daniel with math perfectly, how dedicated he was, even though he struggled with the numbers, how they developed a special friendship that turned into first love. Mia, Valerie said, her voice cracking. Are you sure your dad doesn't know you're sitting here talking to me? The little girl glanced quickly at her dad's table and then back at Valerie with a mischievous little grin. He knows, actually. She paused dramatically. He gave me permission to come talk to you, but I didn't tell him it's because I want you to be my new mom. Just then, Valerie saw Daniel get up from the table and walk toward them. He was taller, stronger, with hair slightly graying at the temples, but that shy smile was exactly the same as when they were teenagers. Hi, Valerie, he said when he reached the table, his deep voice thick with emotion. It's been a long time. Mia looked from one to the other with obvious satisfaction. Dad, you didn't tell me she was this pretty. She turned to Valerie. And you didn't tell me you already knew my dad. Daniel blushed exactly how Mia had described, and Valerie felt like she was 15 years old all over again. Can I Can I sit down? He asked, hesitantly. Valerie nodded, unable to speak. Mia practically jumped for joy. Benny was right. I found the perfect mom, and she already knows Dad. Santa Claus is really magical. Daniel sat in the chair Justin had abandoned, and for a moment the silence between them was barely filled by the distant murmur of the restaurant and the soft piano music. Valerie studied his face, trying to reconcile the shy boy from her memories with the confident man in front of her. "You've changed," were the first words she managed to get out. "You haven't changed a bit," he replied with a smile that carried years of nostalgia. "You still have that gentle way of looking at people as if they're special." Mia watched the exchange between them, her eyes shining with satisfaction, like a little Cupid who had just hit the perfect bullseye. "Dad?" she interrupted urgently. "Tell her about the institute. Tell her about the schools you built." "Mia," Daniel interrupted her, gently placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Easy, honey. Let's take this slow." Valerie frowned, sensing something strange in the dynamic between father and daughter. There was a complicity there, as if they shared a secret. "Institute." "What institute?" Daniel took a deep breath, as if preparing for something important. Valerie's eye. "There's something I need to tell you something about tonight." And the feeling that there was more behind this chance meeting grew in Valerie's chest. "What do you mean?" Mia couldn't contain herself. "Dad, tell her already." "Wait, Mia," Daniel said more firmly, but still gently. "We talked about this. Let me explain it my way." The little girl pouted, but obeyed, hugging Benny tightly. Daniel looked straight into Valerie's eyes. "I know about your date today. I know about Justin. And I knew you'd be sitting right here at this table at this exact time." Valerie's blood ran cold. How did you know?" "Because I planned all of this." The words landed like bombs. Valerie blinked rapidly, trying to process what she had just heard. You what?" Daniel leaned forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Valerie, I've spent the last 15 years looking for you. Ever since I graduated and came back to the city. You had moved away. Nobody knew where. I hired investigators. I searched social media. I asked all our old school friends. But it was only 3 months ago that I finally found you. I found out you were a teacher here in the city. I found out where you lived, where you worked." His voice trembled slightly. "And I found out you were single." Valerie stood up abruptly, feeling dizzy. "You were stalking me, not stalking, watching, trying to find the courage to reach out." Daniel stood up too. "Valerie, you were the love of my life. When I left to study, I was young. I was an idiot. I thought I had all the time in the world. When I realized my mistake and came back for you, you were gone." Mia tugged on the hem of Valerie's dress. "Auntie Valerie, please don't be mad at Daddy," he cried, sometimes looking at your photo. "Mia," Daniel scolded, blushing furiously. "But it's true. And you said she was the great lost love of your life, and I said I was going to help you find her." The little girl turned toward Valerie with determination. "I was the one who came up with the plan." Valerie stared at the 8-year-old girl in disbelief. You had the idea, yes. I told Dad he couldn't just show up at the school where you work because it would be way too creepy. It had to be more romantic than that." Mia gestured dramatically. "Then I found out your friend Lauren was always trying to set you up on dates." Valerie's mind was spinning. Lauren was in on this." Daniel nodded, looking visibly nervous. "Lauren is my cousin. She reached out to me a few months ago because she was worried about you. She said you were really lonely, that you wouldn't go out with anyone. When I found out she was your friend, well, it felt like destiny. I convinced Dad to tell Aunt Lauren everything." Mia continued excitedly, "And she said she'd help. She's the one who arranged the blind date for you." Valerie sat back down, her legs feeling weak. "So Lauren knew. She knew that you guys. She knew I still loved you after all these years," Daniel said softly. "And she knew you deserved so much more than the horrible men showing up in your life. But what about Justin? Why was he so cruel?" Mia and Daniel exchanged a knowing look. "That was the hardest part of the plan," Daniel admitted. "We needed someone to be horrible to you on purpose. Like really on purpose." Valerie's eyes went wide. "Justin is an actor," Mia revealed proudly. "Dad hired him to be the worst date of your life." Valerie was in total shock. You guys paid someone to humiliate me?" No, it wasn't like that," Daniel stammered desperately. "Listen, I know it sounds crazy, but the idea was for you to realize how you deserve to be treated. To make you see the difference between someone who doesn't value you and someone who truly loves you." Mia was right, Daniel added quickly. "You were always so generous. You always thought you deserved less than you actually do. You needed to see the contrast to realize what's truly worth it. Valerie rubbed her face with her hands, trying to take it all in. So, all that humiliation was just an act. The humiliation was real for you, and I feel terrible about that, Daniel said with painful sincerity. But Justin was just acting. After he left, he called me and said being cruel to you was harder than he imagined. He said you seemed so sweet, that he almost broke character a bunch of times. Mia, she added, what if I had left right away? What if it hadn't worked? Asked Valerie. Then I would have had to show up and invent another excuse to talk to you, Daniel admitted. Mia said that if the plan didn't work, she'd go to your school herself to invite you to get ice cream with us. Because I knew you'd stay, Mia said triumphantly. Good people like you don't give up easily. I knew you'd talk to me when I came over to speak to you. Valerie paused and looked at the little girl. How did you know? Because real teachers always stop to listen to children. It's their job, and you're a real teacher. The simplicity and wisdom of Mia's observation touched Valerie deeply. She turned to Daniel. All of this, just to find me. All of this was because I could never forget you, he replied. Because for the last 15 years, every time I met a woman, I compared her to you. Because Mia's right when she says you'd be a perfect mother. She needs someone special in her life, and I know that person is you. Mia stood up on her chair and said, there's one more thing you guys don't know. Her dad and Valerie looked at her. What else is there, sweetheart? Daniel asked. Mia discreetly pointed toward the other tables around them. Some people here in the restaurant know you, Auntie Valerie, and they're waiting to talk to you. Valerie looked around, and for the first time, she really paid attention to the other tables. A couple at the table to the left waved shyly when they realized she was looking at them. A whole family smiled in her direction. The waiter who had been serving them walked over hesitantly. Ms. Valerie, sorry to bother you, but it's me, Pablo. You taught me in 3rd grade 5 years ago. Valerie's eyes went wide with surprise. The boy was about 13 now, but looked older in his restaurant uniform. Pablo, my goodness, look how much you've grown. You taught me how to read when everyone else said I couldn't do it, Ms. Valerie. You changed my life. I thank you so much for listening this far. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Quiet Life Stories, hit the like button and leave a comment. Daniel and Mia smiled, watching the scene with emotion. And there are more people here you taught, Pablo continued. We sort of knew you were going to be here today. Valerie looked at Daniel with growing suspicion. Daniel, exactly how many people are involved in this plan of yours? He smiled mysteriously. Let's just say you've touched a lot more lives than you realize. And all these people wanted to thank you personally. Mia clapped her hands in joy. Daddy, now you can show her the final surprise. Valerie's heart raced when Mia mentioned a final surprise. After discovering that this entire night had been carefully orchestrated, she could barely imagine what else was coming. What final surprise? She asked, looking back and forth between Daniel and Mia. Pablo, the waiter, who had been her student, smiled and signaled discreetly to someone behind the counter. Suddenly, the soft piano music stopped, and a heavy silence fell over the restaurant. Daniel, Valerie whispered, what's going on? Before he could answer, a woman's voice rang out through the restaurant's speakers. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a very special person with us tonight. Valerie looked around, trying to figure out who was speaking. That's when she noticed a young woman standing up from a table near the window, walking toward her with a microphone in her hand. Ms. Valerie? The woman said, now close enough for Valerie to recognize her. It's me, Natalie. Do you remember me? Valerie blinked several times. The woman was about 25 with long hair and a radiant smile that looked familiar, but Valerie couldn't quite place her. Natalie, I'm sorry, You taught me 15 years ago. I was the little girl who stuttered so badly that no one could understand me. Natalie's voice trembled slightly. The girl who cried every day because the other kids laughed whenever I tried to speak. The memory came rushing back like a wave. Valerie remembered a shy little girl with messy hair who used to hide at the back of the classroom and rarely joined in. Natalie, oh my God, is that really you? You used to spend hours with me after school, teaching me breathing exercises, helping me learn to speak slowly. Natalie stepped closer. You told me my voice mattered, and that the world needed to hear me. Valerie felt her eyes welling up with tears. She vaguely remembered that special student, but she never imagined those moments had meant so much. And you were right. Natalie continued, her voice now steady and clear. Today, I'm a podcast host, and it all started with you teaching me that I had a right to be heard. The whole restaurant erupted in applause. Valerie covered her face with her hands, completely overcome with emotion. But it's not just me, Natalie said, looking around. Pablo, can you come forward? Pablo stepped up, looking nervous but determined. Ms. Valerie, when you first met me, I was 8 years old and I couldn't even read my own name. My mom worked 3 jobs and didn't have time to help me. You stayed with me in the library every Tuesday and Thursday, teaching me, letter by letter. Valerie remembered Pablo as a boy smart, but always late with dirty clothes and a constant hunger for attention and love. You taught me, and you always brought an extra sandwich, saying it was so I wouldn't go hungry while I studied. Pablo smiled through his tears. Ms. Valerie, today I'm finishing my business degree on a full scholarship, all thanks to you. Daniel leaned in close to Valerie and whispered, "There's more." A couple stood up from a table in the back. The pregnant woman walked hand in hand with a tall, smiling man. "Ms. Valerie," the woman said, "I'm Caroline. You saved my marriage." Valerie frowned, confused. "What do you mean? You were my son Tommy's teacher 3 years ago." He was going through a really rough patch because his father and I were splitting up. Tommy started acting out at school, fighting with his classmates. Valerie started to remember. Tommy was a sweet boy who had suddenly become aggressive and withdrawn. You didn't send him to the principal's office, and you didn't just give him a warning. Instead, you asked to speak with me and his father. You said Tommy needed to see his parents united on at least one thing, our love for him. Caroline's husband spoke up. You didn't try to save our marriage directly, but you said that regardless of what we decided Tommy needed to see, that we both loved him and that we were going to keep being a family even if it looked a little different. That conversation changed everything, Caroline said, rubbing her belly. We realized we were fighting out of pride, not because of real problems. We went to counseling, worked through our differences. She smiled at her husband, and now we're expecting our second child. The emotion in the restaurant was palpable. Several people were crying, openly, including Mia hugging Benny tight. "Ms. Valerie," a young voice called out from the other side of the room. A young man about 20 years old walked over with a slight limp. "I'm Hugo. Do you remember me?" Valerie looked at the young man. There was something familiar about him. "I had childhood paralysis. I used a wheelchair back when I was in your class." Hugo stopped in front of her. "You were the only teacher who never treated me like a poor little thing, or like I was helpless." And the memory came rushing back. Hugo was a determined, smart kid, but one that some classmates and even adults treated with way too much pity. "You challenged me just like the other students. You made me present projects. You picked me to lead groups. When I'd complain something was hard, you'd say, 'Hugo, you're too smart to use your condition as an excuse.' And today," he continued, "I am a physical therapist. I help other kids with disabilities discover what they're capable of thanks to you." Daniel walked over to Valerie, who was clearly too emotional to speak. "Valerie," he said softly, "when I started looking for you, I found a lot more than I expected. I found out how many lives you touched, how many people you inspired." Mia tugged at Valerie's hand. "Auntie Valerie, did you know you were that special?" Valerie shook her head, still processing everything she was hearing. Natalie took the microphone back. "Ms. Valerie, when we found out Daniel was organizing this special night for a reunion, we all wanted to be part of it. We organized a group on social media," Pablo explained. "We called it Ms. Valerie's Students. There are already more than 200 of us former students." 200? Valerie whispered in disbelief. "And everyone has a story to tell about how you changed their lives," Hugo added. Daniel approached her with an envelope in his hands. "Valerie, this is my gift to you, and also a proposal." With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside were detailed blueprints for a beautiful school with gardens, a huge library, modern labs, and spacious classrooms. "Daniel, what is this?" "It's the Valerie Thompson Educational Institute, a school I'm going to build for you to run." The silence that followed was total. Valerie looked at the plans, then at Daniel, then at everyone around her, watching with anticipation. I don't understand." Mia couldn't hold it in. "Dad's gonna build a whole entire school for you, and he wants you to be the principal, and he also wants you to be my mom, and for all your old students to send their kids to study there." Daniel blushed, but confirmed, "It's true. All of that is true." But Valerie looked around the restaurant at all those people representing years of her career as an educator, all witnessing this surreal moment. "And there's one more thing," Mia said mysteriously. "But this is the final surprise. Valerie held the school plans with trembling hands, still trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. Her mind was spinning between disbelief and an emotion so deep she could barely breathe. Mia, she said with a broken voice. What final surprise is this? The little girl exchanged a knowing look with her father and then looked around the restaurant. First, everybody needs to sit down and pay attention. To Valerie's surprise, everyone in the restaurant obeyed the 8-year-old as if she were a seasoned director. Former students, other customers, staff, everyone settled into their chairs with anticipation. Dad, Mia whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Can you give me the microphone? Daniel hesitated. Honey, are you sure we talked about this? Dad, I'm 8, not 3. I know what I'm doing. Mia reached out her little hand with determination. It was my plan, so I'm the one who's going to finish it. Natalie, still holding the mic, smiled and handed it over to the little girl. Mia held it with both hands, stood up straight, and spoke with impressive seriousness. Hi everyone, I'm Mia, and today I'm going to ask a really important question to a very special person. Valerie felt her heart race. Mia, what are you? Auntie Valerie? The little girl interrupted her gently. Can you stand up, please? Not quite understanding what was happening, Valerie obeyed. Then Mia did something completely unexpected. She got down on one knee, holding the microphone in one hand and Benny in the other. Auntie Valerie, she said with the sweetest, most serious voice an 8-year-old could have. Will you be my mom? Why, the silence that followed was absolute. No kitchen noise, no distant conversations, nothing. The whole restaurant seemed to have stopped breathing. Valerie brought her hands to her chest, feeling tears stream freely down her face. The scene was so pure, so unexpected, that it deeply touched everyone there. I know you haven't known me for very long, Mia continued, still kneeling, but I studied you a lot. I know you teach kids how to read. I know you're kind, even when people are mean to you. I know you hug kids when they're sad. The little girl's voice trembled slightly, but she stayed brave. I know you make extra snacks for the kids who are hungry. I know you stay after class to help anyone who's struggling. And I know... Her voice turned into an emotional whisper. That you're gonna love me, even when I'm stubborn or talk too much. Valerie knelt down in front of Mia, bringing herself to the little girl's level. Tears fell without stopping, but she smiled through them. Mia, I know this is a really big question. The girl interrupted her. So, I brought references. She signaled to Pablo, who walked over carrying a big, colorful box. Mia, what is that? Valerie asked, laughing through her tears. They're letters of recommendation. For you to be my mom, Mia explained proudly. I asked all your former students to write why you'd be a perfect mom. Pablo opened the box and started pulling out hundreds of colorful envelopes. Natalie stepped in to help. Can I read a few? Natalie asked. Mia nodded enthusiastically. Natalie grabbed the first random envelope. This one's from Maria, a former student. Ms. Valerie taught me that making mistakes is just part of learning. Any kid who has her as a mom will grow up knowing they're loved unconditionally. She picked up another envelope. This is from Juan, Miss. Valerie always said that every child is special in their own way. She'll teach her daughter to love herself exactly as she is. Hugo walked over and took a letter. This one here, it really got to me. Miss. Valerie taught me to be brave when I was scared of everything. Mia is going to have the bravest mom in the world. And as the letters were being read, more people in the restaurant started to cry. The scene was so moving that even strangers who didn't know Valerie were clearly getting emotional. There's more, said Mia, standing up again. I made a video. Daniel walked over with a tablet in his hands. Mia spent weeks recording this, he explained to Valerie. On the tablet, a home video started playing. It showed Mia sitting in what looked like her bedroom surrounded by stuffed animals. Hi, Auntie Valerie, said the Mia in the video. If you're watching this, it means you haven't answered my question yet. So I'm going to explain better why I chose you. The Mia in the video held Benny in her lap. First, you are gentle with people who can't give you anything in return. I saw you chatting with the lady who cleans the school where you work like she was a queen. Valerie's eyes went wide. Like I said, Dad and I went to watch you work a few times. The real Mia admitted, shamelessly, to make sure you were truly special. In the video, the little girl continued, second, you don't give up on people. Pablo told me that some teachers said he was never going to learn to read, but you kept trying until he did it. Third, the Mia in the video held up another little animal. You make kids feel important. Natalie said you made her repeat my voice matters every day until she believed it. Valerie was sobbing openly now. There wasn't a dry eye in the restaurant. And the last reason, the girl in the video said with a sweet smile, is because you already love me, you just don't know it yet. I saw it in your eyes when you looked at me today. It was the same look all your kids described in their letters. The video ended with Mia blowing a kiss to the camera. So, said the real Mia, taking the microphone again, this is my official question. Auntie Valerie, do you accept being my mom? Before Valerie could answer, Mia added quickly, oh. And if you say yes, do you also accept marrying my dad? Because I did some research and found out it's easier to be a real family when the parents are married. Daniel turned beet red. Mia, we talked about this. You were going to ask one thing at a time. But Dad, you said yourself that you've loved her forever, and she clearly likes you because she hasn't stopped looking at you since you got here. Mia argued with logic, impeccable logic. It's more efficient to ask everything at once. The whole restaurant laughed through their tears. The situation was so surreal, so pure and funny at the same time, that it transformed the atmosphere into something magical. Valerie looked at Daniel, who was mortified but smiling. Then she looked at Mia, who was watching her with infinite hope. All around her, dozens of former students awaited her answer. Mia, she said finally, taking the little girl's small hands, I accept being your mom. And the girl's scream of joy could probably be heard out on the street. She jumped onto Valerie's neck, knocking them both to the floor in a blur of laughter and tears. And what about Dad? Mia asked from the floor. Do you accept marrying him too? Valerie looked at Daniel, who was reaching out his hand to help them up. Daniel? She said, do you really want to propose to me on the floor of a restaurant in front of everyone after your 8-year-old daughter asked the question for you? He laughed and knelt on the floor beside them. Valerie, I've loved you for 15 years. I would love you on the floor, on the ceiling, underwater, or on the moon. Will you marry me? Yes, shouted Mia before Valerie could answer. Mia, let Auntie Valerie answer, laughed Daniel. Valerie looked at the two of them, father and daughter, on the restaurant floor waiting for her answer. All around her, dozens of people representing her whole career as a teacher were witnessing the biggest moment of her life. Yes, she said, simply answering both questions. Yes. The Starlight Grill restaurant erupted in applause when Valerie said, yes. People jumped to their feet, shouting with joy, and some were even recording the moment on their phones. The scene looked like something out of a movie, but it was real, intense, and deeply moving. Mia jumped into Valerie's arms while she was still on the floor, screaming, I'm gonna have a mom. I'm gonna have a mom. Benny got knocked to the other side of the room in the chaos, but no one cared. Daniel helped both of them stand up, and for a moment, the three of them stood there hugging in the middle of the restaurant, forming a family created like magic in just one night. Everyone, everyone, Mia shouted, asking for everyone's attention. Now we need to do the wedding, Valerie. And Daniel looked at each other, laughing through their tears. Sweetheart, Daniel said gently, weddings need to be planned. There has to be paperwork, a church or city hall, a dress. No, Mia interrupted him with determination. I did my research. We can have a symbolic ceremony right now and then do the official paperwork later. Natalie walked up with the mic at the microphone. Actually, the kid's right. I know a justice of the peace who can perform the official ceremony. He's right here in the restaurant. Valerie's eyes went wide. Right there, an elegant man around 50 years old stood up from a quiet table at the back of the room and walked over, smiling. Good evening. I'm Dr. Edward Mendez, Justice of the Peace. I was also your student, Ms. Valerie. 3rd grade class of 1995. Valerie studied him, trying to remember. Edward, you were the boy who wanted to be a judge. Exactly. And you used to say I'd be a fair judge because I always got worried when kids fought at recess. He smiled. Mia called me last week and explained the plan. I brought my paperwork just in case. You called a judge. Valerie looked at Mia impressed. I told you I'm very organized and I research everything. Mia was beaming. Uncle Edward said if you guys wanted he could marry you right now. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, visibly nervous. Valerie, this is all happening so fast. Are you sure? Before Valerie could answer, Pablo walked up carrying a big box. Teacher, sorry to interrupt, but we brought one more surprise. He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful white dress with delicate lace details. How did you know my size? Valerie asked, touching the soft fabric. I asked Lauren, Mia admitted, and she said you always dreamed of getting married in white in a simple ceremony surrounded by people who love you. Valerie looked around the restaurant. All those people, former students, staff, other customers, touched by the story, really loved her in different ways. It was the family she never knew she had. There's more, said Hugo, walking over with a small velvet box. Mr. Daniel hired me to make these special wedding bands. Daniel blushed. Hugo is a jeweler now, one of the best in the city. Hugo opened the box, revealing two beautiful, simple yet elegant rings. I engraved a special message on each one. He showed Valerie's ring for the teacher who taught me to believe, and Daniel's for the father who brought me true love. Wait, said Valerie, confused. You guys planned all this thinking I was going to say yes. What if I said no? Mia shrugged. Then we would have packed it all up and tried again next year. I'm persistent. The comment drew bursts of laughter from everyone. Caroline, the pregnant former student, walked over. Ms. Valerie, if you want, I can help with the dress. I work as a hairdresser now, and I can do a quick makeup look. Another young woman Valerie hadn't recognized yet offered, I'm Elisa. You taught me 10 years ago. Today, I'm a professional makeup artist. In a matter of minutes, the restaurant transformed into a wedding operation. The staff at the venue gave up a private space so Valerie could change while the men rearranged the tables to create a makeshift aisle. Pablo ran to the kitchen and came back with the chef, a tall man with a generous smile. This is Chef Ramon, announced Pablo. He wants to prepare a special banquet for you guys. Well, on the house, the chef added quickly. Any teacher who raised so many wonderful young people deserves the best I can offer. While Valerie was whisked away to get changed, Mia took command of the operations like a true event planner. Uncle Edward, you stay over there near the piano. Dad, you'll come in from that side. Auntie Valerie will come in through here, and I'll go in front throwing petals. Petals? Asked Daniel. Obviously, every wedding needs petals. Mia ran to the holiday decorations and started picking flowers from the arrangements. Natalie took on the role of master of ceremonies, organizing who would be the witness, who would record, and who would play the music. In the makeshift space that served as a dressing room, Valerie looked at herself in the mirror. The dress fit her perfectly. Caroline had done a simple but elegant hairstyle, and Elisa had taken great care with natural makeup that enhanced her eyes still red from all the crying. I can't believe this is happening, she murmured to herself. Ms. Valerie, said Caroline, adjusting the makeshift veil made from a piece of lace someone had found. You deserve all this happiness. All of us here know that. You dedicated your life to making other people happy. Now it's your turn, agreed Elisa. From outside, they could hear Mia directing the preparations, with the authority of a professional organizer. No Uncle Hugo stays there, Aunt Natalie there. Everyone has to form a line so Mom can walk through. When everything was ready, Natalie knocked on the door. Ms. Valerie, everything is prepared. The bride was ready. Valerie took a deep breath, looked at herself one last time in the mirror, and smiled. I'm ready. The first thing she saw when she stepped out was Mia, lovely in a dress someone had improvised with napkins from the restaurant tied like a skirt over her clothes, throwing red petals on the floor and shouting, Mom's here, Mom's here. The whole restaurant was transformed. Candles had been lit on all the tables, creating a magical atmosphere. Flowers from the holiday arrangements formed a small makeshift altar where Dr. Edward was waiting with a book in his hands. Daniel was by his side, visibly nervous but beaming, wearing the same suit as before, but with a flower tucked in the lapel pocket. When Valerie started walking down the makeshift aisle, everyone present stood up. There wasn't any professional music, but someone started humming the wedding march, and soon everyone was humming along, creating the most emotional soundtrack she'd ever heard. With every step she took, Valerie saw familiar faces, former students she had helped, people whose lives she'd touched, restaurant staff who didn't even know her, but had been swept up in the magic of the moment. When she reached the makeshift altar, Daniel took her hands and whispered, You look beautiful. Mia stood between them, holding Benny, and looked up at Dr. Edward. You can start, Uncle Edward. Dr. Edward smiled and opened his book. Dear friends, we are gathered here to witness the union of Valerie and Daniel, and also the birth of a new family that includes little Mia. He looked at Valerie. Valerie, do you take Daniel as your husband, promising to love him, respect him, and build a family with him and Mia based on love and understanding? I do, she answered with a steady voice. Daniel, do you take Valerie as your wife, promising to love her, respect her, and, together with Mia, build a family based on love and understanding? I do. Mia. Dr. Edward turned to the little girl. Do you accept Valerie as your mother, promising to love her, respect her, and be a loving daughter? Mia got serious for a moment, then beamed a radiant smile. I more than accept. I chose her. The whole restaurant laughed and applauded. Then Dr. Edward announced, By the authority vested in me and witnessed by everyone here, I declare you a family. Daniel, you may kiss your wife. The kiss was sweet, full of promises, and 15 years of longing. When they pulled it apart, Mia shouted, Now I need to kiss my mom too. Valerie crouched down and Mia kissed her on the cheek with all her might. I knew Santa Claus was going to send the perfect mom, she declared to the whole audience. The restaurant exploded in applause again, but this time Natalie asked for silence. I still have one last surprise, she announced. What's the last surprise? Asked Valerie, still hugging Daniel and Mia, trying to process everything that had happened on that extraordinary night. Natalie smiled mysteriously and signaled to someone outside the restaurant. The doors swung open and people started coming in. Lots of people, whole families, children, teenagers, adults, all carrying flowers, signs, and huge smiles. Guys, what is going on? Asked Daniel, visibly confused. Dad, said Mia proudly. I didn't. Just tell Auntie Valerie's former students about today. I told the whole city. Valerie's eyes went wide when she recognized some of the people walking in. Those are parents of current students and future students of the Valerie Thompson Institute, shouted a familiar voice from the middle of the crowd. It was the principal of the school where Valerie worked, Mrs. Martha, a 60-year-old lady who had always supported Valerie in everything. Mrs. Martha, how did you know? My dear, the story has already spread through the whole city. Mia created a social media group called Operation New Mom and invited half the world. The principal laughed. When we found out you were going to have your own school, we decided this just had to become a public celebration. A little girl about 10 years old came up timidly. Ms. Valerie, it's me, April. You're my teacher this year. Valerie crouched down to get on the little girl's level. April, what are you doing here, sweetie? I told my mom how you helped me when I was struggling with math, and my mom told the other moms, and everyone wanted to come congratulate you on your wedding. The girl handed Valerie a drawing. I drew a picture of you as a bride, and the drawing showed Valerie in a huge white dress with Daniel beside her and Mia in the middle, all smiling under a colorful rainbow. April, it's beautiful. Thank you. More kids started coming up, each wanting to give her drawings, letters, or just a hug to the teacher, who had gotten married like something out of a fairy tale. Auntie Valerie? Mia tugged at her hand. Look outside. Valerie looked out the restaurant windows and saw something incredible. The downtown plaza across the street was packed with people, hundreds of them holding candles, signs, and flowers. It was a true celebration vigil. How many people did you invite? Everyone I could, she replied with a cheeky grin. I posted in the school group, the neighborhood group, the church group, the market group. Daniel laughed. My daughter turned our wedding into the event of the year. Dr. Edward walked over. Actually, there's one more thing. City Hall found out what's happening, and the mayor's on his way here right now. The mayor, Valerie and Daniel said at the same time. Does he want to make something official? He explained. Dr. Edward started, but he kept the details a surprise. And just then an elegant woman walked into the restaurant, followed by a man in a suit. It was clear they were important officials. The woman stepped forward. Ms. Valerie Thompson. I'm the City Secretary of Education, Dr. Monica Castillo, and this is Mayor Luis Fernando. Valerie was speechless. Mia, however, stepped right up. Hi, Uncle Mayor, I'm Mia. I organized all of this. The mayor laughed and crouched down to talk to her. Hello there, Mia. You did an amazing job, but now I need to say something important to your new mom. He turned toward Valerie. Ms. Valerie, in 20 years of public service, I've never seen a spontaneous gathering like the one today. In just 2 hours, we received over 1,000 messages from parents, former students, and citizens talking about your work. The Secretary of Education spoke up. That's why we want to make an official proposal. But in addition to the institute your husband is going to build, we would like you to take over as the pedagogical coordinator for all the city schools. Valerie was stunned. Daniel held her hand, visibly moved. That would mean, the mayor continued, that you could implement your teaching methods across the entire city district. Your salary would triple, and you'd have total autonomy to create innovative educational programs. Mia jumped for joy. Mom's going to be the boss of every school in the city, but there is one condition, the secretary said with a smile. We want you to accept that today be officially declared the Day of Education with Love in our city. Valerie looked around. The restaurant was full of people representing 15 years of her career. Outside, hundreds of other people were celebrating a teacher that many didn't even know personally, but whose impact they'd felt through their children, grandchildren, or neighbors. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mom, Mia shouted. You'll be able to help all the kids in the city. It's going to be like being everyone's mom. Natalie stepped closer again with the microphone. Miss Valerie, before you answer, there's one last thing we want to show you. She made a signal, and people started getting into position. Outside through the window, Valerie could see the crowd getting into formation. Look out there, Pablo said, pointing in the plaza. Hundreds of people were holding candles to form a giant phrase. Thank you, Ms. Valerie. Tears flooded back into Valerie's eyes. It wasn't just former students. It was parents, grandparents, siblings, friends, an entire community, recognizing the quiet work of a teacher who had dedicated her life to planting seeds of knowledge and love. This is... She started but couldn't finish. Mia took her hand. Mom, do you see the whole city loves you just like I do? Daniel hugged her. Valerie, you deserve all this recognition and so much more. Valerie took a deep breath, looked at Mia, then at Daniel, and then at all the people filling the restaurant and the plaza outside. I accept, she finally said. I accept the proposal, I accept the challenge, and I accept continuing to be a mother to all the children who need it. And the cheer of joy was deafening. Inside and outside the restaurant, people clapped, cheered, and wept with emotion. Mia climbed up onto a chair and shouted so everyone could hear. My mom is going to take care of all the kids in the city. Santa Claus really sent a miracle in that moment while she hugged her new family and was embraced by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. Valerie understood that she'd found much more than love. She'd found her true purpose, her chosen family, and the proof that dedicating your life to doing good always comes back multiplied. Outside fireworks lit up the holiday sky. The whole city was celebrating not just a wedding, but the recognition that true heroes are those who plant trees, knowing they'll never sit in their shade. Mia, holding Benny and watching everything with satisfaction, whispered to her teddy bear, I told you I was going to find the perfect mom. And I found one who's going to be the mom for the whole city. As the night wound down, Valerie shared a quiet moment with Daniel on the restaurant balcony overlooking the glowing plaza. You know, she said softly, I never imagined my worst date would lead to adopting a city full of kids. Daniel chuckled, and I never thought my daughter would plan our happily ever after. But here we are. They watched Mia below handing out candy to the children in the crowd, her energy boundless. In that instant, Valerie felt a new chapter beginning. One filled with school picnics, community fundraisers, and endless bedtime stories. It was more than a miracle. It was home.